Yo, what's up, man? Hector here, strongastheck.com. In this video, we're going to be continuing our common kettlebell mistakes series. So over my shoulder, you will see the first couple of episodes. Highly recommend you check those out because it's going to make a lot of sense of what we're going through today. So if you want to work on your setup, if you want to work on aligning the belt to the right side of the body, if you're using single kettlebell work, if you're going to be working on, the clean's got to be pretty clean in order to cover what we're going to be doing today. So as I mentioned, as I open up the series, over the last decade or so, coaching over 1,100 plus students here in our gym, many of our students online, and even working with kettlebell instructor candidates, I noticed a common theme or a common set of mistakes that people were making with their kettlebell exercises, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. So today we're going to be talking about how to improve the kettlebell press and the 5 mistakes you're likely making with the kettlebell press, okay? So if you're making any one of these mistakes, you're leaving strength on the table. You're leaving progress on the table, right? Why should that be important? Well, I think we're all doing this to see progress, right? But most importantly, this can lead to some potential injuries down the road, right? Overuse of certain muscles, unracking the bell certain ways, pressing in certain ways. And if you start tweaking things because you're out of alignment or you're not properly executing the lift, that stops your progress. That keeps you from being consistent towards your goals. And consistency is the mother of success, right? So enough babbling, let's head on over and let's dive into the 5 mistakes you're making with the kettlebell press. Let's get started. All right, so let's dive into mistake number 1. So if you haven't checked out the first couple of videos, highly recommend you check those out, especially the one on the kettlebell clean. In order to have a strong press, in order to have a strong anything that goes overhead in the form that originates in the rack. So press, push press, jerk, bent press, front squat. You want any of those to be strong, the kettlebell clean is to be on point. So I covered that in the previous lesson. So mistake number 1 that you're making with the kettlebell press is cleaning too high. And the first couple of these you're gonna notice they're gonna be kind of based around the clean a little bit. And I covered this a little in the last lesson. But what happens is, if you clean the bell too high, sometimes guys make the mistake of trying to clean to the chest, right? Or the rack. Don't focus on cleaning to the rack, okay? Because you're gonna overshoot it, you got too much power coming up. And that's why I talked about in the last lesson, where you wanna focus on cleaning this way, leading with the elbow and cleaning back this way, okay? When you focus on that and then you have quick hands, the bell's gonna finish where it's supposed to finish, and that's in the rack position, hand is below the chin. So if I clean too high and I'm kind of up here like this, my shoulder's already out of position. See this? Like it's not connected, all right? And what happens with that as a result is you're going to be pressing more with your shoulder versus pressing with, obviously your triceps, but like your lats. It's a big one, which is going to be one of our common mistakes here. And so I'll show you what that looks like. So cleaning too high, right? So I'm going to focus on cleaning to the chest, and you'll see what happens. Let me kind of angle here just a little. So you see how the bell kind of, for when it goes out, and then it comes back in. But now I'm too high here. You see how like my hand is kind of level with my chin, and I'm kind of in this position. So this is not a dumbbell. Well, dumbbell press is going to be one of the other mistakes. Most important thing here is we don't want to be cleaning too high. Okay, we want to clean lower, and I'm going to get into that in the next step. So that's mistake number 1. Don't focus on cleaning to the chest, because when you do that, you're going to end up way up here, and your shoulder's going to be out of position. And also you can see I'm disconnected here, right? That was one of our mistakes in the kettlebell clean, not staying connected, not becoming one with the kettlebell. So we want our forearm, We want our tricep and our ribs, we want those to become one unit. Because from there what happens is my body begins to tell the kettlebell what to do versus, the other way around. We don't want that. Okay? So cleaning too high is mistake number 1. Mistake number 2 that you're making with the kettlebell press is not getting into the press rack. I did a video on this a while back on the 2 types of racks that you have. So you have a press rack, and then you have a jerk rack. And the jerk rack is going to look more like the Get a Voice Sport rack, where you're kind of resting up front, like on the ribs, because you kind of create this this launching pad, and it shortens it creates a straight line overhead, and that's what we want. But what we want to do sometimes is when we clean, we're not getting in the press rack, and here's specifically what I mean when it comes to the press, is we clean and then we have this angled, diagonal alignment with our arm. So if I clean and I'm not in the press rack, you'll see what that looks like. So you can see how the bell's kind of to the center of my mass here, which is not bad, but look at the alignment here. Now I've got to kind of correct that as I press. And sometimes guys will initiate the press this way. You can see this is not a strong structure here, right? We even talked about, we talked about structures in the swing lesson. I don't want this diagonal. So if I were to put, I think Brett Jones said one time I think it was a CERT many years ago, I think 2012 or something like that. He said, if I were to if you're in this rack position and I put a rocket booster underneath your elbow and it takes off, where's that press going? Boom. Right? It's coming up this way. And so if I start pressing this way, 1, shoulder's already disconnected, and 2, I don't have proper length tension, right? So there's this concept called length tension relationships, right? So basically we want to be at the right joint angles to create the right amount of force to execute a lift, okay? So if we don't have proper length tension relationship here, if I'm kind of pressing from this position, not going to work. It's again, imagine punching this way. Not going to punch very well, okay? We're not going to be able to produce optimal force. And so if you kind of start in this position and you're not getting into the press rack, things aren't going to turn out well. You're going to be pressing with your shoulder, and after you press with your shoulder long enough, that's when things start to, eventually go wrong. So here's what we want to do. I want you to imagine that you have a sponge right here on the side of your ribs. And you're going to try to get your forearm as vertical as possible. So as soon as I clean, bang, and I'm going to try to get my forearm as vertical as possible. And I want to imagine there's a sponge here, and I'm going to try to smash that sponge and squeeze all the water out of the sponge. Now, if I have a rocket booster under my elbow, guess where that arm's going? Exactly, okay? And this is going to tie into when we start getting into the common kettlebell snatch mistakes. This is going to all make sense once we kind of get to that point. But here, if my forearm's vertical, it's this, right? Boom, straight up. I've got proper joint mechanics here, right? Proper alignment, proper length tension, and I'm going to have a really good press at that point. So here's what it's going to look like. So I'm going to show you what we don't want, and then we're going to kind of show you what we do want, okay? So align the bell to the right side of my body, because if I'm using single bells, but if I'm using doubles, again, you notice, if you're using double bells, this all makes sense if you use doubles. If I use double bells, each bell will be aligned to one of my legs. So I covered that in the swing tutorial. So set up, right? I go through my hinge, I lean back, I shift, I drop my weight back, hike. Okay, so now I don't want to be here. I want to be here. So you see how my forearm is vertical, pretty vertical, because now from here, it's a strong press, versus here, I have to try to like make adjustments. And the longer that you're holding that bell, especially if it's, maybe you're going for like a rep max or something, right? You're trying to, maybe you're training for the beast tamer, or you're trying to just increase your pressing strength. If you clean, and you're cleaning to the wrong rack position, and that, which is a skill set, right? This is a skill you got to practice. You got to make adjustments. The longer you're holding that bell, the more your body's under tension, the more energy that you're using. And again, you're kind of leaving strength on the table. So if you can clean to the proper position, you're ready to rock and roll. So let's see if I can clean to that press position. Right? So forearm is vertical. I'm smashing that sponge, because now from here, I've got a nice groove from that position. See? Versus here, now it's like, or I gotta like recorrect and then try to press. So we want to clean to that rack position and get that forearm as vertical as possible. Okay? And whenever you smash that like imaginary sponge, you're going to feel your lats kick in, and the lats act as a nice shelf, like a support system to press through. Okay, so mistake number 2 that you make with the kettlebell press is not getting into the press rack position. Mistake number 3 you're making with the kettlebell press is creating, this is probably the one I see the most when guys are trying to press heavy bells, especially single kettlebell. Creating downward motion, and sometimes it's a result of cleaning too high. So you clean too high, and then you kind of create this like downward motion, but you create a downward motion to the point where it's this like seesaw effect, and you're kind of breaking this cylinder here. Again, like your core, right? This cylinder, imagine your midsection is a cylinder. We're not trying to break this. There will be a slight lean once the bell's heavy enough, but the lean is going to be to the side of the press, and it's actually more of you like leaning into the bell, right? Shifting your center of mass, shifting more of your weight towards that side to press, because you're kind of like wedging into the bell, which kind of looks like a little bit of a side lean. But what we don't want is, we don't want to clean kind of high, or even like just, it's not up here like where I showed you on mistake number 1, but it's kind of in the middle. And then what happens is they kind of create this downward motion to like, I understand why they may be doing it, and that is to turn the lat on, right? So clean up here, and then pull down with the lat, press. That's too many moving pieces. The skill set and the goal should be to clean to the press rack, and then clean low, as I mentioned. We're not trying to clean to the chest, we're trying to clean more to the hip. Okay, so I'll show you the big no-no, and then after that, we're gonna go into, I'll show you the kind of what we want. So big no-no. Okay, kind of high. Right? There's this like, because they're trying to connect the lat and then go. First of all, if you're an instructor candidate for SFG, let's say level 2, that's a fail. Okay, so there should be no downward motion of the kettlebell prior to the press. What we want to do is we want to clean to that position. We want to clean to that position, okay? Let's see if I can do it. So you see how I'm low already, like I'm ready to go. Forearm is somewhat vertical. I'm not here in front of my chest. I'm ready to go, right? So I'm gonna do it again. We want to clean. And I want to lead this way, and then quick hands, boom. and I'm gonna fall right into that press rack, hand below the chin, lat is ready, locked in, and then it's ready to go. See? Because now from here, I can smash that sponge, boom, press. And then I come right back down that same groove, okay? So, ties into mistake number one, cleaning too high. Because if you clean too high, you're gonna create this downward motion, you're gonna break your cylinder, and if you're testing for strong first level 2 certification, you're gonna fail. No downward motion. The goal here, clean to the rack, and then you're ready to go, okay? So that's mistake number 3. Mistake number 4 you make with the kettlebell press is losing leverage with the kettlebell. Allowing the bell to get too far away from your center of mass. This is not a dumbbell press. You see guys, you know, slinging some iron around at the gym, get the dumbbells on the legs, hike them up, and they get in this position and they're kind of hitting reps way out here. Nothing wrong with that. One of the reasons why some of them do that is because that puts more stress on the shoulder. And if you're bodybuilding, well then, that's what you got to do, right? But in the context of what we're talking about here, we're talking about getting strong, okay? Improving our overall strength, et cetera, et cetera. So what we want to do is we want to keep that center of mass aligned to our body the best possible. I think that's the correct phrase. Clean the bell, boom, and then come out here. Kettlebell, center of mass. My center of mass is getting away. And now it's pure shoulder here, kind of pressing through. That's kind of like, you know, like doing wide grip push-ups. Puts more stress on the pecs, puts more stress on the shoulders, but you're not going to be as strong there versus getting your hands closer into your center of mass, really hitting those triceps, et cetera, et cetera. So this is going out of the groove. So your press groove is almost like 45-degree angle, right? So if you look at like your chest, right, and let's say like your ribs right here, right? Ribs, they go right kind of like right down your hips, right? So if you come up your hips, comes all the way up, and it's kind of like right in line with like, I guess the nipple line. This is the 45-degree angle right here. We want our press to stay right in this range. So once we clean, we want it to stay right here, keeping it as close to our center of mass as possible, and then pressing. And I actually, when I press, I almost transition to almost like a barbell press. Right, so imagine if you had a barbell, right? You stepped up to a barbell, you grab the barbell, and you're here, right? You get in tight, and then boom, you press. This is kind of like in that barbell press position. So once I'm here, once I'm racked, as soon as I take off, boom, I kind of turn into that like barbell, like tight position, barbell gripped position. Forearm is vertical, and I've got a nice steady trajectory going up. Okay, so I'll show you mistake, what we want. Oh God, that sucks. A lot harder. And then kind of coming down that route, right? Like your first movement is out. You're losing leverage because where's the weight going now? Weight's going this way. And what did I mention when we talked about the cylinder? It appears to be a lean, but what's actually happening here is you're wedging and you're kind of aligning your center of mass. You're kind of aligning your center of mass underneath the bell. See that? Versus coming out this way, you're now losing leverage because the weight's going out way out here in this like 90-degree angle. So what we want more of like a 45-degree, almost like, again, I like to kind of transition to kind of like this almost like a barbell style press. I still get this like external rotation, so really good pressing mechanics, but I kind of switch my hand into this like barbell position. Right there. See that? And then we want to follow that groove straight back in. That's the barbell groove. Woo! Okay. So no moving away from your center of mass. We want to stay in that 45-degree angle. I like that little barbell style press, kind of the position I'm trying to get into. From there, I've got a good vertical forearm, and I've got a good trajectory as I head overhead, okay? So that's mistake number 4. Mistake number 5 is not owning the active static position. We even hear someone call this like the static stomp deadlift. And when I say the static stomp deadlift, I'm not talking about stomping your legs into the ground before you go. That does nothing. I mean, it might excite you a little bit, but it does nothing. That doesn't do anything. That's just, I don't know, show, I guess. Will it wake you up? Sure. And if you feel like you need to get psyched up, then do it. Static stomp deadlift, or the active static, is imagine, okay, so, and the active static, by the way, this applies to, I guess, I don't want to say all, but I'm going to say all kettlebell movements. So, imagine I'm standing on wet sand, okay? So if I'm just standing here, right? And I zip my muscles up and I get tight, and I want to drive my feet through the ground. We call this rooting, right? So you try to imagine you got like your feet are tree trunks, and you're trying to root your feet through the ground so you can get really solid. You're grabbing the ground with your toes, you're kind of corkscrewing with your legs, and you're spiraling this tension like all the way up your body. But you're actively driving down really hard, and you're continuing to drive down hard. So the goal, if I'm standing in wet sand and I execute that, if I were to move my feet, there should be like imprints, like deeper imprints in the ground. It shows because I was actively driving down the whole time. And this applies to swing, clean, press, snatch, push, press, and jerk. Okay? So if I were deadlifting too, right? If I were deadlifting, boom, and I lock out, I'm not just stopping here. I'm actively driving the earth away from me the whole time. If I'm doing swings, I'm driving the earth away from me the whole time. So, same thing with the press. Once we get to this like lockout, we're not done here, okay? We're not going to go bang and then come back down. Once we press and we get to that lockout position, we're performing the active static. So we're actively like driving through the whole entire time. I'm not just passively locking out here. So what this basically is being intentional. We got to be very intentional with what we're doing. So once I press and I lock out, I'm actively like trying to push like the ceiling away from me. And so we talk about this like energy force. So imagine there's an energy force from like the elbow radiating up through the hand, but then also radiating down into the shoulder to where you're not reaching, right? This energy coming down is keeping you connected, but the other energy is pushing through the ceiling. That's the active static. So you're actively constantly driving up. So once we press, boom, press here, we're not just pressing and then coming down. It's press, hold for like a 1 count, actively drive through. You're actively driving your feet through the ground, so you're kind of driving in opposite directions. Kind of like the scene in Star Wars, right? Remember when the walls were kind of caving in? And they were like, they're trying to push the walls away. So imagine the walls were at the perfect length, and you can kind of like wedge yourself in, and then you're actively like driving the walls in opposite direction. That's what you're trying to do here. You're trying to make imprints, wet sand, and then you're trying to actively drive through. So, example of big no-no, common mistake, and then what we want. So, press, what we don't want. So you see, no intention there. Just kind of pumping them through. Do it again now. Actively driving the legs down, bracing, actively driving through the ceiling. Okay. Bada bing, bada boom. All right. That's common mistake number 5. All right. So recap. Mistake number 1, cleaning too high. Okay. Not becoming one with a kettlebell. Okay. Up here, you got leakage. Common mistake number 2, not getting into the press rack. Kind of aligning to that side, smashing the sponge, getting as vertical as you can. Common mistake number 3, creating that downward motion, that downward movement of the kettlebell, which kind of ties into cleaning too high. You want to clean low and bring the bell up to the rack position. Forearm as vertical as possible. Okay? Mistake number 4 is losing leverage with the bell. Initiating by moving the bell out. We want to stay aligned in this press groove, kind of like 45 degrees from like your chest, your hip, right about here. We're staying in that groove, and I like to kind of transition to what I would imagine is like a barbell position, and I'm kind of riding up that way, okay? Mistake number 5 is not owning the active static. You clean, you press here, and you come out. And owning the active static from the waist down too. So clean, and like as soon as you clean, you're kind of like your legs aren't solid yet. You're like kind of like shuffling your feet. Seen this before. Clean, shuffle the feet, and then go. As soon as you clean, boom, active static, driving down, press, active static, own it for about a 1 count, come back in, knock out however many reps you got, all right? So that's all I got. HectorStrongestHec.com. If you're liking the videos and you're interested in some of our programs that are centered around kettlebell pressing, super easy stuff to follow for guys that are really busy, got a crazy schedule, I'll drop a link in the comments. You can check out some of these programs. And again, they're free, totally hook you up. That's it for this week's Common Mistakes series of the week. Later.